Are we on the interwebs? Yes, we are on the because we're an internet company, right? Yeah. Was the thumbs up? Let's start. Okay. Hoofddorp, can you hear us? Culemborg, can you hear us? We have no clue. Is someone on link? Could someone open the link? Link check. And then within the, is there people in the meeting? So well, let's start anyway because we don't want to waste too much of the actual speaker's time. Thank you all for coming to this first SaKE in Finland. Really proud that there's already such a huge turnout for the first event. And just a quick check for me, please. Hands up for people that are doing development of some kind. Okay. That do product management of some kind. That do like operations. Also some of yeah, Arjen's doing everything. It's like the sweeper. And from the rest, what are you doing? Slides? Slideware? PowerPoint, porno? Yeah? Awesome. The stream is working. Awesome. What are you doing there? Architecture. Yeah, I forgot architecture. Who's doing architecture? You're just managing them. Or yeah, where are all the other architects? Where's your team?
I don't know. Maybe they are busy architects in a way.
But they should share. They should share knowledge. They should show us the way forward. Okay. Yeah. And who of you work in this building? Okay. Who work in Sanomatalo? Who work in Tampere? Hey, Tampere, go. Who of you work in Hoofddorp? Culemborg, no one from Culemborg, right? Hungary, where's the MDC? Is the MDC online? Maybe we can have a shout from Attila. Okay, without further ado, I want to introduce the first speaker of tonight. And you're maybe one of the newest Sanoma employees.
Or at least in this room, I think.
Yeah.
Or I'm afraid that I'm the one.
Who joined Sanoma after you?
Less than a month? I know that Arnold Clerks has joined very lately. So Arnold Clerks is in the learning division, the chief business technology guy. So there's one member of this virtual team, hopefully in the future. But I guess all of you have joined long time ago.
So next time we should include learning as well.
Absolutely. I mean, Joost van der Dol was in town last week, so next time we need to align the trip so that he can also make it here.
Or have the next one in Den Bosch.
Absolutely. That's an option as well. Yeah. Good.
I'm going to give you the mic.
Oh, all right.
How should I work it? Good. Yeah, I actually do have slides, but maybe I just don't use them because you guys were all not slideware makers, and that's really good stuff because then there's actually some actual work getting done. But few words about me. As Sander mentioned, I'm a newcomer in the company. I joined in April, and Mikael asked me to just basically replace or be a stunt for him for this night as he's flying over to Hoofddorp for some meetings there. But it's probably wise for me not to kind of go into a lot of detail about the Sanoma technology and how it works because you might know it better. I'm still don't know you all, and hopefully after this type of a meeting I can shake hands with at least few of you more, and then get to learn who you are and what you do. So instead of trying to dwell into the Sanoma technology, I just maybe pick one team there, which is surprisingly the technology strategy and architecture team that I was asked to head for the new organization. And as the name implies, it does something or has something to do with technology strategy and architecture. Also security as a third leg. So there are three things that our team does. Enterprise architecture for all of Sanoma. That's designed to sort of help the business transition or transformation, addressing the kind of a strategic goals of the business and the many different requirements which have been distilled into key principles of the architecture. The architecture key principles are in the fields of modularity and having sort of loose coupling between the systems, having a modern API-led approach for the developing of the components, and enabling reuse of certain things in that way, but not forcing anybody into sort of monolithic platforms either. So it's kind of trying to solve the ages-old reuse problem by doing it a bit more modular and loosely coupled way than traditionally. Obviously, some of these components are already live and serving happy customers, like the Sanoma account and sales platform and some others, and some are in the works, like the video platform or video on demand, where I've been actually closely involved from the day I joined almost. So those are the type of services that architecture designs and the together with the solution unit and the business trying to understand what are the priorities we should drive in each of these things. What follows is basically an enterprise architecture vision that we then try to implement through solution or domain in the different domains through the solution project. So whenever there's a project, the architects in the team actually go into those projects and work as solution architects. So that's the way for architects to kind of still know quite a bit about coding and the practical things that their architecture causes to happen in the projects, while then kind of taking the enterprise architecture vision and the domain-specific architectures into the actual solution, so that they support the common goals that have been agreed in the architecture. And then also the architecture might need to take in a change if there is a sort of pattern of something always kind of having to be adjusted. Obviously, there's something wrong with the design or the architecture. So that's the architecture team. Now that you might have heard that Jarkko Honkio is leaving, there is luckily a redundant era of Jarkkos, and Jarkko Hirvonen will be heading the chief or working in the chief architecture role, and then it's kind of a key point of contact in that level of things. But obviously the whole architecture team is available for projects and questions and whatnot. Then in some cases we actually have gaps, so we are pushing the pedal or recognizing this need and pushing the pedal in hiring, and hopefully we can staff up the architecture team a bit more, and then use also resources if we need from outside. Then as a second kind of or area of responsibility is this technology strategy. It's actually called that way because Mikael's thinking was that nobody will understand if we call it technology management. So technology management is actually a discipline that I'm most familiar with myself, and it's about providing some or bringing in some systemic approach to taking into use the good innovations and technologies that have already been taken into use by developers or architects or some guys who have actually identified a good piece of technology and productized it somewhat and tried it in real life. Bring those innovations back to the rest of Sanoma. But also when you have a dizzying array of competing products like we have, for example, in the business intelligence space. Now that's my favorite example. But it's basically 15 or so systems, and if you name an analytics tool, we probably have them in the house. So that needs to the resources are spread too thin. We need to pick few of them only, and then produce a really good service offering around those. So that's what technology management tries to help. But as said, it's a community activity, and I think one of the key elements with the innovation labs or the way of working together with them is to try out our modular components with those projects beforehand, and then when vice versa, then when they are mature enough, the purpose of those components is to make the life of the new business initiatives easier by having them to use components that have been tested and are good to go in production. Yeah, then one more thing, the business continuity or security field. That's something where we certainly seem to be lacking processes, especially in the Finnish side of the business, and we need to shape up in a good way there. We need to bring the identity management processes, security, incident management processes and risk analysis, audit management, all these type of capabilities that are very core to digital businesses up to the level that they are needed. And we need to be ready to deflect the kind of common threats of today, APT attacks, DDoSes, whatever you have as threats to the business. So that's what our team try to do, and hopefully we can find very good kind of like common points here and not risk also in the innovation lab exercises the security approach by using, again, relatively standard and easy to understand and package technologies that we have in the offer in the coming years, if not now. All right, that's maybe as an introduction of me, and please contact me after this, come and chat, and let's discuss more about how can we help you.
Okay. Applause for Timo. But are there some questions for him?
It's not supposed to be a one-way street there.
Maybe some questions from the interwebs?
We have a prize that we can give out to the first person who asks a question, and that usually hits it.
Is that required for Finnish?
The Finnish audience.
You get a subscription to Nudo.nl for free. No questions? Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Please grab me on the break, and I'll be happy to discuss more.
Yeah, cool. So for our next speaker, Juha. Probably for the Finnish crowd, no introduction needed, but for the people on the interwebs, which can't hear me right now,
hello world.
do the introduction yourself.
Yes, my name is Juha Hotti, working in mobile strategy, on mobile strategy on the strategy and digital development team here in Sanomatalo, Sanoma Media Finland. I'm telling you a little bit about the mobile, and since the previous speaker didn't have any slides, I doubled my amount.
Great.
It should work. So a lot of familiar stuff, or at least for the Finnish audience, but let's recap and let's talk about something else as well. Wow, technology. So here I work practically in two teams, strategy and digital development here in Sanoma Media Finland. I work on mobile and device strategy and on the partnerships as well with the device manufacturers, such as Nokia, Microsoft and Samsung. I also belong to Legal Privacy Center of Expertise, and there I'm looking after the location data at targeting and mobile analytics. I've been into quite many teams already at Sanoma, in Helsinki Sanoma Development, Sanoma Data, New Business Development, now in this strategy team. So what's happening currently? You might have seen this picture. It's 2005, the PayPal conclave in Vatican, and people are taking photos with these funny devices. They're not like connected, even they're these old school cameras. Then 7 years passed, and the same happening looked exactly like this. And there's a little difference between those two of these pictures. No need to explain. Then the presidential inauguration, 2009 and 2013. Even the president and his family were totally hooked up, concentrating on other things. And this is a familiar picture from public transport and wherever you go currently. But it's today. So how our company in Finland is doing in mobile. we have 3 million weekly mobile visitors coming from mobile browsers and mobile applications. We've got around 100 million weekly mobile page views, and it's been going up all the time. The latest figures from April told us that it went a little bit down, but because we had an Easter and holidays. So in total, 4 million app downloads to date in Finland only. And in April, 54% of all online traffic came from mobile, and that is going up all the time. This is the traffic development within the past 2 years. Red is desktop, blue is mobile, and gray is tablet. It's going up. But the device traffic share is more interesting. This is just a fresh slide, it came today. So we went past 50% already. And the two peaks you can see there are the Christmas periods, 2012 and 2013. And whenever that Christmas peak happens, it means, of course, that people are not in the office, so they cannot use the desktop browsers, but they're using mobile instead. And that Christmas peak, which goes up like 10% on 1 week, it's the standard level on February. And now we're on April, we've gone past the Christmas peak already. This is the mobile phone use cycle during the day. As I think every one of you have seen the desktop daily cycle, it goes so that when people are out to offices, they open their browsers and they do funny things on the working time. And then when they leave the office, the traffic dies. But in mobile, the traffic is peaking all day. So mobiles are with us all the time. It's not just when you are at the office, but when you are especially waking up in the bed, when you are heading for a lunch, when you are commuting on public transport, and especially when you go to sleep. So as we have studied, the most of the people use their phones in the bed, and that's not even a lie. When you wake up, you read the news, and when you go to sleep, you read the news. So Windows Phone, welcome to Finland, internet viewers as well. We are a very Windows Phone specific country. The next slide will show you the usage shares, but when we preloaded the application into the Windows Phone on Nokia Lumia devices, the Windows Phone app traffic went skyrocketing, and it's been doing that all the time. Our apps are preloaded in every single Nokia Lumia device that are sold in Finland. So practically every Lumia customer uses our app at least once, and hopefully even more. It's been a very successful partnership with Nokia. But on the device proportions in the traffic, 68% of the app traffic comes from Windows Phone. And browser games is a bit even between Android, iPhone, Windows Phone, but the app traffic is quite huge. And I hope I don't need to judge anymore why Finland is so much concentrating on the Windows Phone. It's not that iPhone and Android is not important, because they are, but currently the traffic is coming from Windows Phone. One nice thing that we have taken steps forward currently is set of client libraries we call Sanoma Kit. So we noticed that we have a lot of features that should be the same in different applications, whether they are Helsinki Sanomat app or Ilo Sanomat app or any other app. We use advertising in most of them. We use analytics in all of them. There are a lot of features that we use in every single app. And instead of programming the features from the scratch, again to all applications, we decided to make a library out of them. And that's now under work. We are going to have the MVP version of the Sanoma Kit ready by July 1st. It will contain the big data library Sanoma Analytics Collector and doing the mobile targeting capabilities. But in the future stages, anything that we see important can be included in Sanoma Kit. App rating requests, then Sanoma account, native video player, and different ways how to ask consent from people, especially for location or ad targeting or sending push notifications. So this will come after the vacations, hopefully. Then my next topic is about quality and privacy. Incident is a standard word, but it's not that hard. Something has happened lately. We had this one mobile app, and since it was a mobile app, it was small and it was easy to do, and it was very like lots of fun to do. We only tested it on the UI level, and the app worked very well, and it looked good, and it was very responsive and stuff. So we preloaded it to hundreds of thousands of devices. Then some months passed, and everything still worked well. But then the device manufacturer called us and, do you know that why your app is taking like 1 gigabyte of the device memory? And well, we didn't know, but they have discovered out that the app didn't flush the cache at any time. So whenever app refreshed the news feed or the content, it just added it to the same cache. So the device memory was consumed in some months, and it was a time bomb for device manufacturer. And this was a very good use case for us that, well, the apps need to be tested professionally, and not just that it looks good and it works well, but for months of usage in ordinary phones, it might do some funny stuff. Second funny thing was that we had an app live for 3 years. We didn't do any security audits because we thought that there's no need to. But then we recently discovered that the app is communicating all the passwords and user credentials, not over HTTPS, but in a plain text in a non-secure protocol. We should maybe had looked at it before, but we did. And now we know that we are doing the security audits for, at least for the most important applications. Then we also discovered that we might collect more data than what we actually wanted. And this is not a huge issue because it's been live there and we are not misusing any data. But let's say that location data is quite sensitive for any one of you. And whenever we collect location data, we want to keep it anonymous, at least if we store it for days or weeks or even years. But then we noticed that, okay, there's this one analytic call that actually reports all the user coordinates to the analytics servers, where we have no use for them, but where they can be connected to a cookie and an identifier, and then at last to the user itself. And we are saving that data for infinite period of time. That's not what we wanted to do, and yeah, this is something that the privacy team and privacy protocols are taking into account in the future. Sanoma's privacy mission is to bring value to customers through optimal use of data while maintaining trusted relationship. So privacy wants to enable all business demands and develop our business further. But we still want to tell customers that we are a trusted partner with them, and we want to openly and transparently tell that how we are using the data and how the user can control the data that we are collecting. Key trends at the consumer privacy attitudes at this moment are that consumers are willing to share their data with brands that they trust. And as Sanoma, we want to stay as a trusted company. Trust is created through openness and transparency about data use. This is about privacy policies, and whenever we are asking for a location consent so that user will send their coordinates to us, we must tell them how we are using them and what we are collecting and how we are storing the data. If we don't tell that, the user might think that, well, Sanoma is a bad company and they are saving my trails and they are tracking where I am, and then they are, you know what. Data sharing is a value exchange. Data sharing is just for the clear benefit. So if you are letting the application know your coordinates, there must be a clear use for that. It's not just that the apps want to have your coordinates, but the user doesn't know why. And consumers also want to be in control of the data they share. So in the apps, in mobile services, there must be user switches where these features can be turned off if user wants, because the other option can be so that the user deletes the app and never uses it again. Biggest concerns in consumer minds are the information security, identity theft, and unsolicited marketing, which is clear. Privacy by design is something that the Canadian Information and Privacy Commissioner Anne Cavoukian has developed. There are 7 principles. Privacy should be proactive, not reactive. So privacy people are trying to help businesses to help how to create services and apps. It's not just that when some bad things happen, then we come into the teams, but being rather preventative. And for the mobile services and for the web services as well, the privacy should be the default setting. No, not just that there are switches on and off, but they're off at the default, but more to like protect the user privacy at the first time. The whole privacy by design is explained here quite well. Whenever we start to develop the services, we should take the privacy, the legislation, and rules into account in the first stages, not so that we create a service and then we decide that are we actually doing this by the book or not. Full functionality, it means that when the privacy is taken into account in the service development, it should be a value-adding point in the service. So it's not trade-off that, okay, this will not do any money for us because we do this by the book. End-to-end security, of course. Then visibility and transparency is that we tell users what we are doing, how we are storing their data, and what we are doing with the data. And finally, respect for user privacy. So whatever we are doing, especially for the coordinates, we want to respect the coordinates and location data so that people trust us and there is not going to happen any, you know what, Apple was caught some years ago that they actually saved all the user coordinates where every user were moving and so on. So being respectful. Building privacy in mobile, there's some principles as well, is to of course practice this privacy by design, but be communicating openly, making privacy policies easily accessible, and they should be readable in the enhanced notice that please tell the main points clearly in native language, not a lawyer language, so that people really understand what they are doing and what the service is doing. Users should be provided with choices and controls. We as a service provider should secure users' data, whatever we are doing with it. And accountability is the person who decides how this is going to happen. And when there comes incidents, they take the incidents they take the responsibility of the incidents. And also, if we are using any like third-party services such as advertising, we should take into account that the third parties are also using the privacy features that we require. So some privacy actions going on at the moment. We are consolidating the privacy policies and consents. So how Sanoma apps are asking the location data and so on. This should be done in the same way in the applications. Then we are now concepting the first use flow. So whenever people are taking our apps into use for the first time, we have a similar way to get the privacy policies and terms and conditions approved, and we will tell people how we are collecting the data and sorry. And then at last, testing, security audits, and so on. So what's up in the future? Moore's law, I don't need to explain this to you, but the convergence is going fast forward, and the number of devices is going smaller. And I believe this is from the Microsoft's future vision video, that all the computing power will be in that mobile phone in the future. But instead of having different laptops and tablets, we will have different kind of screens and slates where the mobile phone is connecting to. But all the computing power and all our data is on the mobile phone. I took some points from the Nokia Siemens Networks Technology Vision 2020. They have very interesting views for what's happening in the next 6 years. So NSN believes that the mobile traffic is going 1,000-fold from now. 1 gigabyte of data per terminal per day. This will be achieved with new technologies and even more cell sites. The femtocell is an appliance that you take into your home, and you get the mobile network there in your living room easily, and nobody shares it. The latency in mobile networks will be decreased to millisecond level. It's now 100 milliseconds in 3G and 20 in LTE. The liquid app concept is quite interesting. It's something that NSN is bringing to the base station level. So instead of fetching the content from our data centers, we will bring the content in the base stations. And there will be no internet traffic. The mobile applications will get the content from the base station. And that will increase the capacity and speed of the mobile terminals. Self-aware network components is something that, when you live wherever you live, you go there for the night and you sleep. But when you come to the office in the working hours, people move, and the network capacity is needed where people work during the day, and during the night they will need it at the other areas. And NSN is creating this type of a network that it can dynamically adjust the capacity where people move. This is a very good thing. I think many of you have noticed that the 3G has some congestions and data doesn't work usually. Of course, the cloud is a hype word, and the teleoperators are going there as well. And the total energy consumption is going down. It means that it will be more, not that expensive for operators anymore to install new base stations. I think you've seen the classic picture of base station. It's a huge mast, and then there's a fence, and then there's some kind of building in the ground just next to the mast, and that was a generator. So 10 years ago, the base station needed a generator to do the electricity. But nowadays, the base station is just a computer box. It can be installed in the mast just next to antenna. It doesn't work with solar power yet, but the energy consumption has gone down a lot. But this is from the operator side. Last slides, Internet of Things is coming. Philips Hue lamps, which you can control with iPhone. Then we will have home appliances that run Android, that tells to your mobile phone what's in the fridge currently. Then we have Tesla cars and, any other cars that are connected to internet all the time. And even your body scales at home. So, you know what this means. It means that data is collected even more in the future, and we need to take the privacy into account. But we can also see this as an opportunity to make the data even more sophisticated and make more business out of it. I think my time has run. Mobile first. Thanks.
Any questions for you? Yes, I have one.
Are you already seeking for cooperation with the operators?
We are actually speaking with NSN quite a lot, but since NSN is not actually an operator, but it manufactures all the base stations and the network components that the operators are doing, we are not there yet with the operators because they are not there yet with NSN. But Finland is Finland is not a critical country in this sense, but we are having communication on the future topics.
Because what period of time do you think our content will be maybe brought closer to the mobile networks? What's your opinion about that?
Well, what to guess? But we are the biggest service provider, the online provider in Finland. Not accounting Facebook and Google, but I think we are in the first tier whenever this happens, hopefully in a couple of years.
All right. Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks a lot. Miguel, where are you? Yeah, come up and hook up here. For the people that watched the last SaKE and the first one we streamed live, already saw this presentation, but who attended that, or at least saw something similar to this? Who watched the stream last time? 1, 2? Okay. Who attended it live? Ja. Wat wil jij? HDMI of wil je VGA? VGA ligt hier. All new technologies. And by the way, for the people that are watching this from home, we're trying to fix the visibility of the slides on the screen. We now turned off one of the lamps, so probably the screens are better visible. And are you running Windows, Miguel?
What do you think?
I think health froze over.
Probably.
So hopefully now the screens will be slightly better. Now completely black. Jelmer is already nodding his head. So, based on the last presenter, who of you are involved with mobile development within Sanoma? Hey. So, and can you relate to the story that Juha was telling? Yeah. Very much. Yeah. I think.
I think the data about the mobile versus desktop are a little bit more extreme in the Netherlands, I think.
Okay.
So,
Serge is saying that you're not hearable on the audio. Serge is saying that the visitor graph, the page view graph, is even more dramatic in the Netherlands. It came even earlier, the 50% mark, the tipping point. Okay. When was the tipping point in the Netherlands? Okay, a year and a half ago. Okay. And when was it here? The tipping point of the 50% mark? In the new year. So 6 months ago. Yeah. Okay. So Serge is saying that it's like already 1.5 years ago in the Netherlands, the tipping. Okay, are you ready? Yeah. Ah, awesome. So then you need this, because otherwise not. Is it good enough like this?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, no further introduction needed. Good luck.
Thank you. Well, hi, I'm Miguel Marcos. I'm the software architect of digital content team of Sanoma Netherlands. And I'm responsible for a couple of sites. And, oh, there you go. So this, the team is divided in two groups. One of them is news. News has mostly nu.nl. It's the biggest news site in the Netherlands. And there are some subtitles related to it. And there are a couple of other sites that are linked to it somehow. One of them is belegger.nl, which is for stockbroking. And the other one is a video site. There's also another team, part of this, there's also another group part of this team. It's called Social Publishing. It's really new. And we have a few titles. One of them is like a sort of gossip glossy. Another one is sort of a Facebook for people that shows, when you were in school, photos of your school time. The other one is a question and answer site. And the final one is a vacation booking site. So this is the whole team, the collection of titles from the team. I'm going to focus on one of them, nu.nl. I'll use it as a prototype to describe a bit what we do in terms of architecture, in terms of vision to the site. Yeah, we're number one by far in the Netherlands. We're digital only, and we focus on quick news. So instead of following the model of a newspaper where you get the news and you edit them and then somebody checks the news, double checks the news, and then they're published the next day, we do it in minutes, which means that sometimes you get a bit the raw text and then it gets corrected throughout the day. But that's a main feature of the site, very quick news. We're a team of about 8, the IT team for news. It's very small. It's kind of growing, and it's becoming a bit uncomfortable. We're becoming too big. Maybe we should split it again. But the point is, we work in a compact unit, and I think that's the key to developing really quickly. It's to have small teams, to work as a startup almost. We use a lot of software, mostly open source. We use Python Django for development a lot, almost everywhere. Then we have Apache servers. We use Varnish, which helps a lot with traffic. New Relic is not open source, but it's really handy to be able to see some graphics of what's happening. And then we have also app level caching with Redis. We use MySQL as a database, and we use Puppet for to deploy the server setups. And we also use some internal services. We don't have logos, so I just used an online logo generator to not to be very to make them a bit more interesting. So one of them is the media management system, MediaTool. The other one is the content library. We use it to search. The search functionality of nu.nl is based on that. Our identity login management system, IDM. And then we just started using SPNS from Hungary, the Sanoma push notification system. I hope it's that, or very close to it. Service, I knew it. I was kind of searching in the documents for the long name, but I couldn't find it anywhere. So I kind of made it up, and I hoped it was in the neighborhood. So yeah, we are a small team, so we cannot, it would be impossible to develop everything. So we use a lot of stuff. But the stuff that we use it as components, and then we build our own solutions. And that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about. This is the general architecture. It's a 3-tier architecture. We are very API-centric. We use the API as a source of everything, also for the website. So the first, where you see the logo, it's basically our website. It's API-based. Then we have the apps, Android, iOS, also API-based, also first-party, we do it internally. And then we have a bunch of third parties that work with us, and they also use the API to deliver news. Well, three very interesting ones, or quirky ones, are Spotify, LG TV, and Peugeot. Apparently you can ride a car and read the news at the same time. It's a bunch of, it's 30 in total, so there are a lot more clients for this API. And the nice thing is that because we also use it ourselves, also for the website, we're basically eating our own dog foods. The API that we deliver, it's not a theoretical, interesting API. It's something that was really well tested internally before we show it to people outside. What I would call the backend is basically the database and the CMS. They're coupled together. And a number of external APIs, like the weather, TV, and media tool, to count a few. So this is how we build the API. We have a core API that delivers, for example, authentication, access control lists, and a couple of common things. And then we create modules. Each module is basically an endpoint. So let's say if you have the API new.nl/weather, that's an endpoint. API new.nl/TV guide, it's another endpoint. And all of them are created independently. And all of them, they don't communicate with each other, but they communicate through a protocol with the core API. The advantage here is that you can mix and match endpoints. And because we have different titles, they are so closely related, but each one has their own API. What we do is we create a selection. We choose which endpoints we want to use, and we generate an API based on that. So you have the new API, but also NuTech, which is their own website, has another selection of endpoints. And the Sport API also has a different selection of endpoints. So some of them are common, some of them are specific to a certain API. So this is the API in short. We have a generic thin core. We do authentication, access control list, and a couple of other common features there. Basically, it's something that can be reused to any other group within Sanoma or also outside Sanoma. Each endpoint is a module. So basically, the orange things here are independent modules. And it's multi-site, so it means that when you have a bunch of sites that use more or less the same API, you can just use one project, and you generate different profiles for each output. So yeah, this is what we did with the API. We created a Lego system. We created a nice modular system. And it helps a lot with development because you can change one thing without affecting the others. And the only thing you need to be able to do is to have a protocol. Where that enables things to communicate with each other. This is an example of the API. It's very interesting. This is the HTML view of the API. So when you go to a browser to a certain URL of the API, you basically get a documentation on top and a result call underneath. And this documentation that you see here is also based on your access control list. So if you only have access to a few features, you only see a few features documented here, plus the result that you get.
So it's a REST API?
It's a REST API.
Version.
Sorry?
It's version.
Yeah, the API is versioned.
Maintain the previous versions.
We avoid creating new versions of the API. Basically what we have is we created the original API, the version 1. And then we considered it version 1 as long as you add features, but you don't change any current behavior. And 3 years later, we've managed to be still on that point. So we.
On mobile space, if I understood correct, and what you can correct, we are supporting also older app versions, and those could be running against older API versions, and sometimes it could get a headache.
Yeah, we don't do that. We had in 2011 we had an old API that was only used for an app. It was developed by a third party, and we didn't have control over it, and it was also giving some headaches. So we decided API is a core feature of us, and we need to be in control of it. So we did our own API, we deprecated the other one. And we've been sticking to that API for the last 3 years. It doesn't mean that we didn't do any changes to it. We've done already 3 major revisions to the code. But the public interface that we display is still the version 1, with some additions, of course.
Is this documentation automatically generated from the code somehow, like
Yeah.
Java style?
Yeah, it's inside the code. Whenever you have a method defining an endpoint, on the top you have a string, which is the documentation. And that string is taken to the HTML view. So it detects you're using a browser, and then it shows you the documentation, in addition to the call itself. Which is very nice, because I remember giving documentation to LG, to the party that was developing for LG, and they, I don't know, 2 months later they came with the app, and they didn't ask a question, which was really nice. It was the first time that you could see documentation working for you, instead of having a document, sending them a PDF, and having them constantly asking you questions that are somewhere in the document. So this I would consider a killer feature of our API, and we're doing it everywhere. We serve about 1 billion API calls per month for all mostly to the apps. It's actually more than that. Serge is always, my manager, is always telling me that I'm wrong. It's more than that. It's more than that, but I don't know what's the current value. But it's let's say it's between 1 billion and 1 billion and a half, something like that. And then we have the front ends. By front ends, I mean our web sites, our first-party websites. They are built somewhat similar, in a similar way to as the API. They have a common core with all the styling there. We use some CSS pre-processor called SAS. It simplifies the creation of styles with the use of variables and other things. All the designs that we currently do are responsive, and it means the website, but also all individual components that you have are also responsive by themselves, which means that sometimes you can decide you either put a slideshow in the middle of the page, but you can also put it in the sidebar. It's the same component. It will adapt to the width. And we have a style guide. I'll show you more about it in a minute. This is basically a dictionary of how we build a website style-wise. So you have everything from atoms to pages. An atom is, for example, a font or a color, and we decide we define here all the fonts and colors that we're going to use for a certain website. Then you have the molecules, which are a composition of that, and then it goes all the way to templates and pages. A template is basically what you're seeing here. It displays how our site will look like when we finish development. So basically, you can have a styling people focusing on the styling here on the style guide. And when this is done, this is basically live code. You transport it to the front end, and you finish your development. It's also a nice showcase to see what's going to happen in terms of development of a website. So this generates live CSS code that we can apply to the websites. This is a very generic app, so we're going to use it for other sites outside of news. This is an example of one of our new front ends, responsive. So you can see the two views, and it's API based. This is Newsport. It's one of the subtitles. This is the LG app, also based on the API. This is another photo of the LG app, a slideshow. It's iOS in a iPad view, let's call it. Android in a small view.
Are these hybrid apps?
Well, all apps are hybrid.
Can you
but
repeat
it's
the
not
question?
Sorry.
Can you repeat the question?
The question was who asked the question?
Well, I asked you whether these are like native apps or hybrid apps, so that you just kind of use PhoneGap or
No, they're native apps. Of course, you can never say that an app is 100% native because we do use web views for the content, of course. But I would consider it a native app because all the infrastructure is native. Also Androids, and we don't use any common platform. People are very allergic when you create a look and feel that's not native to the platform. And we've experienced that before, so at some point we decided let's just not do that. Let it be what it's meant to be. So an iOS, the iOS app has its own beta testing team and its own design process. Android app, exactly the same story.
Because I'm wondering, like, there has been quite a lot of discussion about hybrid applications, whether the quality of those is good enough. I mean, because the speed of development is pretty great if you can use, like, if you have a responsive site and then you can just repackage those to 3 different platforms, that would save tremendous amount of time and effort
But that's the theory.
If that works.
That's a theory. That's the theory. We tried it and we failed. Many people have tried it and they failed. And I have great examples like Facebook tried it, they failed. You have LinkedIn, which after they released their web-based API, their mixed system, they created articles explaining how wonderful it was and so much better than native. And then you see them a few months later just making a native version because the web version didn't work. I think we will get there. I don't think we're there yet in terms of creating that native look and feel that people appreciate.
So a follow-up question then, that if the commonality cannot be reached from that perspective, is then you have Sanomatalo type of things in your roadmap then?
That you can use because it's backends, but then it also because you do different versions of it for each platform, so you repackage it in a slightly different way. But I think it's mostly with the UI that you shouldn't mess up too much because people are really connected to their native UI. And also performance, so if you use some backend that's not native, it should be okay as long as the performance is not very highly impacted. I have 1 minute. Which okay, we're working on a CMS. Actually, we're working on a framework for the CMS. And the question might be, why are we doing a CMS? Because when you have 2 things. When you reach a lot of work that you do in CMS is customizing. There's a point where the customization is so big that the CMS that you're using, the package, becomes a hindrance. And I think we're on that level. Our whole development is focused on customizing things. So what we decided to do, we're going to do a very thin framework to support CMS, and we're going to do a lot of modules. We're going to port a lot of our modules to it. Time is over? Okay, then guidelines. I'm going to be very quick. Everything that we do is done with some philosophy behind it. And I think this is really important to always repeat it to all the developers. And one of them is keep things simple. Every module, everything that you build needs to be built in a way that if you need to replace it in a few months, in a year, or whatever, that it doesn't take more than a couple of months of development. And we're there. The API, if you want to rebuild it, it takes about 4 months. The front end's the same story, and we will implement that philosophy everywhere. So another thing is pragmatic development. You should create generic things that other people can reuse, but you shouldn't be too crazy about it. You should be pragmatic about how generic you want your things to be. Most of all, they should be functional. Most important of everything is you have to create things that you are able to ship. So short development cycle, it's also very important. Platform agnostic data, we did it with media. So instead of creating different custom media formats for every platform that we serve, we just created a set of standard media formats that everybody can use. And I have a very quick story. You know the space pen? NASA in the 60s, they needed a pen that would work in space. And the current pens didn't work it, and something that could be able to write absolutely everywhere. Well, a few hundreds of thousands of dollars later, and almost I think almost a year of development later, they created this wonderful thing, which is the Space Pen, which is able to write absolutely everywhere. And this is really amazing. But the Russians just use a pencil. And I think we should be a bit like that. It's really wonderful to think about amazing solutions for things, but sometimes you just have to go for the obvious. So that's it. Thank you.
Some say it's a hoax.
Yeah.
I've researched it. It's true. It was not. It was a corporation. Fisher Price offered a lot of the budget, and it was not millions. It was hundreds of thousands. But it also costed a few months. So yeah, it's true. Just not as exaggerated as a legend. Oh yeah.
So now, there's time for one question. Then we'll go to the break. And please repeat the question.
Okay.
One question. Who's the lucky one before we break for the break?
No one that you can ask stuff to.
Yep.
Oh, there's one.
APIs, so do you have the kind of API management tool in use to kind of generate documents or add security or add rate limiting features or any other sort of API management practices? Tool or just is built into all of your
The documentation is built in the code. The access control list is currently we're going to create a dashboard for the CMS in order to manage the users of the API. Currently, we have like 30, so if somebody is needed, we do it by hand. But we're going to create a dashboard also with statistics coupled with it, which makes it more visible to everybody.
Okay, so this was the one question. It's now time for a break. There should be drinks outside. And please be back in 5 minutes. Jelmer, are we back? Okay, welcome back everyone. A kind word from our sponsors, because Innovation Lab is paying for the drinks and the food. So a warm hand for Andres from the Innovation Lab. That's said and done. So now for the next speaker, Sami, you're with the ACE team, with the Analytics Competence Center. And the topic modeling, is that what you're working on a day-to-day basis?
No, actually, topic modeling is something that I did last year, and now they're live, so I'm working on other stuff, but I'm going to explain about what is currently live.
Okay, cool. Good luck.
Yeah, so this is something, the topic model is work, topic modeling is work that I did last fall. And it's basically, the idea is to get a bunch of articles and automatically cluster them to different topics based on the words that they contain. So there's no external knowledge and there's no human involvement. It's just automatically clustering them to topics. And this was then later used for deciding or predicting the interests profile for online users, and also to do the demographics predictions. So this is it's an article processing step. So this there are two major points to it. First, you get in the text, which is natural text in a digital form, and then you have to process it to be able to do some modeling on it. And then first I'm going to explain about this processing, and then about the topic modeling. So in the beginning we have an article, which we first split into words. Then we remove anything that doesn't actually appear to be a word, like these dashes and numbers. We can't actually decide anything about. They don't express themselves anything about the content or the topics of these articles. So we just remove them. And then let us focus on this one word. It's in Finnish, pyysi. And look at how we have to normalize it in a sense. This is not in its original form, pyysi, which is to ask in Finnish. It's changed in the context of that sentence, but we want to match words between articles, so we have to somehow normalize it. There are two ways to do that. First is stemming, to remove anything added in the end, and to get like the basic form or the base form of that word. That is quite much used in search engines, at least in the past. But then there's also the possibility to go even a step further and take the original form called lemma, which is to if you go to a dictionary and look at the word up, that's in the form, it's in the lemma form in that dictionary. So in here, I will later show you examples in different languages. But in here, the first row contains the originals in the context of the sentence, these articles, or these words. And the second row, you have the stem, which is just you remove something from the end to contain the stem of that word. But as you can see, the stems don't match in all these three examples. The leftmost example is different from the rightmost sample is different from the other two, even though they come from the same, they basically are the same form, the same word. But if we take the lemma, we arrive at the same word. So this is a pre-processing step for the text to make the words such that it doesn't matter which sentence they are used in, but it only matters what they represent. And so we can match these same words in other articles. In English, these examples would look like this. So the first row would be the break. It's in the original form. The second example, you can see that when we take the stem, the first and second match, but the third doesn't match in the stem. So taking a lemma makes all of these words match. And in Dutch, the same. So again, back to the article where we've removed all the dashes and numbers. Now we convert all of these words to their lemma form. It doesn't make any sense reading that. It's not a natural language anymore, but it contains all the words in lemma form, so we're able to match articles between articles. And now there are some stop words. They're called stop words because they are so common that they appear in multitude of articles, but they express no information about the actual content. If you take this word, you really can't say what topic it is. For instance, take word football. That tells a lot about, it's not about economics, it's not about science, it's football. But if you take the word ask, it doesn't say it's football or economics or science, it's ask, it's just a word. It doesn't tell us anything about the topic. So we identify these stop words, and they come from a list. And we just remove them and then end up with a representation called a bag of words. So this is just all the words in the article processed and combined to a collection of words.
Can you go to the previous slide, because I need to ask.
Nope, sorry. This is one way. I can, if you can make the question. Sunday. Yeah, the question was there was a stop word called Sunday, which I marked as a stop word. A stop word list is an interpretation of what is and is not a relevant word. I had that in my stop word list, but you can always argue if that's relevant. I would say in this context, when I was given, or I downloaded all the articles in Finnish papers that were published in digital form, everything that I got was available. I considered Sunday not to be relevant in the sense that we have like sports, we have economics, and these kinds. If you go into specifics, if you have only very narrow subjects, you might find it reasonable to have. Let's say some sports might happen only on Sundays, then it might be reasonable. But in my list, that was a stop word.
One more question. How did you identify this list of stop words?
I downloaded it from Google. Okay, so now we have a bunch of articles that are processed in this way. And then we go into topic modeling. So now we have our articles on the top, and I've chosen to divide them into 3 topics. Whoa, it goes back. So I'm going to explain quite technically how this algorithm works. So first, we take the first article and randomly assign them. I've actually randomly assigned all the words to topics, and the algorithm then tries to change the topics of each article to somehow cipher which articles belong into same cluster, which to the first which did the second, which did the third. So in here, you can see on the bottom are the words in this current article and their topic assignments. Then these graphs on the top, or the bars there, represent how many words of that kind are in each article. Let's take Barcelona, for instance, here, which is almost at the top. And the first topic, there are a lot of articles had word Barcelona, and that was assigned to topic 1, just by random. And the other 2 topics don't have that word that much. So now let's focus on this word Barcelona, which we want to sample. We want to assign it to a topic that we think it goes to, should go to. So let's first look at the, in each topic, look at the counts of this word in that topic, and also look for this article on the with the number of words. Well, actually, I'll explain this. So the number of words expresses how many words in that article belong into that topic or have been assigned. So the word Barcelona will be assigned to a different topic based on these numbers, and these numbers are combined to become probabilities. So now on the bottom you can see probability, and that expresses how likely we think this word to, what is the probability that we think this word belongs to the topic 1, topic 2, and topic 3, respectively. And then we sample, or actually this is the part where we actually calculate the probabilities. Now, previously we just combined the numbers and then sample, and we see that the probability for the first topic was so big that that prevails, and we assign this word to the first topic. Then we move on.
Is there a question? How come you are looking at individual words and not in any context? I mean,
The context comes from these numbers. If you look at the number of words, it tells me, you can see it as weight, how many words, for this article, how many words are in one topic. So how much of that topic is represented in this article. That's context for the article. And the other context is the number of words in each topic. So if we go look at the Barcelona, the context for Barcelona in topic 1 is that topic 1 had a lot of words of Barcelona, but the other topics had very little. The contexts, these two contexts, article and topic, are combined to the probability, and then we assign or sample. We randomize to assign the word to a topic based on that probability. And we can see that we do the same over and over again. Actually, what we can do is speed it up. And when we've done with one article, we move to the next and move to the next. I'll just reduce the speed a bit. So what this does is it goes through these iterations, goes through all the articles several times, and because it's based on probability, there's a probabilistic model behind it. So in the end, when we've done sufficiently many iterations, we arrive at a topic assignment. So let's look at it in a iteration scale. So now on the left, you have the number of words for each article, the number of words in each topic. So the bigger the bar, the more words they are. So you can think of it as the weight of that topic in that article. And on the right is just for each topic, the number of words in that topic. Now let's go and look at each iteration at a time. You can see that the number of words in each topic change, and also the number of words for each article, the number of words in each topic change. Let's just let it play. And it appears that there are all the articles are now assigned to 2 topics. There are actually 3 topics there and 3 different categories, but because I randomly put them somewhere in the beginning, it can happen that the topic assignment is not found if that is there. So what I will do next is start from scratch, and you can see that the articles have their words in 3 separate topics. And this is basically what the algorithm does. This I would call the optimal solution. I'll explain this first. I specifically selected 7 articles from 3 different topics. One is Lionel Messi, one is Edward Snowden, and one is avocado recipes. So they are highly separate, but they do have overlap in the words. If they don't, then this doesn't work that well. So they actually expect there to be overlap. Yes, there was a question.
You may have just answered my question. What's your training set?
The question was, what is my training set? There is no training set. This is a method that's based on completely in the data. So I do not have, you mean my data set? Training set is as giving the right answers. I don't have right answers. Yes, but that's. No, I don't actually assume that. But that's the model makes the assumption that there are only a few topics for each article. In production, we have 201 topics, which is very small, but for the purposes that we have now, it's sufficient. The plan is to increase that and make it more granular. There are like 26 topics about sports, combining all the articles between all, currently basically HS and Ilta-Sanomat. But there are a lot of other topics, and all the interest targeting capabilities are based on topic modeling of Sanoma content. I'm actually done.
First question from me. How did you build the presentation?
I coded it.
You coded it?
In JavaScript, yes. So I implemented the method in JavaScript. And actually, it was online.
I used to be impressed with people doing the demo from terminal, but this is as cool as doing that. So, any questions about the topic model?
So, did you have some initial list of the topics? Did you set it manually, or did it appear automatically?
The question was, did I have a previous or a given list of topics? And the answer is no. What this method is that you have the bag of words, so the articles with processed words. You just give them that, and the only parameter, or there are few parameters, like the biggest parameter is how many topics will you find, and the algorithm does it automatically, and there's no involvement from me. I'm not giving it any information to which topic each article should be or what topics to find. The result is, having found 200 or searched for 201 topics, is that there are like 12 noisy topics which contain not stop words but close to it. And there was another question? the question is, where is this being used in production? In Finland, well, this is where all the Finnish articles are assigned topics based on a result of this article, of this method. And those are then used for the demographics prediction and interest prediction. And those are then used for ad targeting and also content recommendations later. Now they are actually live in ad targeting in Finland. And this is what we're actually currently doing for Netherlands articles with Arno Wester and our team.
What is the Finnish language library you are using to get the lemma?
So the question was, what is the Finnish language library that I'm using to get the lemmas from? I'm using Voikko, which is open.
Last question from Mika.
Was there?
No, actually there was already a question about this. I was thinking, can you somehow apply this in our like content library and use that for like categorizing all the articles automatically?
The question was, can this be used in content library to categorize the articles automatically? And the answer is yes. The biggest problem and benefit is your question is, do I give it topics? Because I don't give it topics, I get anything out. I have to interpret each and every one of those topics, what they are assigned to. It's not that I can get this result and just use it everywhere. There's a lot of steps to use it, but this could be actually in some places where we store content, this data is already there. So it is being used.
Okay. Well, thanks again. And for the next presenter, you also made it difficult for us with his slides. But
Sorry.
for the people watching from home, we tried to merge them into this presentation so they're more readable. And you're actually
No,
Nope.
Nope. Where are you from?
Nitor Creations.
If they can't read the screen, they probably can't read your t-shirt at home. But
Yep.
Nitor Creations.
Nitor Creations, yep.
but you do work for Sanoma as a contractor.
I've been working close to a year now in several different, both for Sanoma magazines and now here for news.
Okay. Is it in your presentation what you do, or?
Nope.
What do you do?
Currently, I write code for Avain, which is a cross-platform, cross-BU sales platform.
Okay. Well, good luck with the presentation.
Should they be already on the screen?
This is in Finnish, so maybe you can read it.
Yep. That's strange.
Sami, do you know how this works?
Oh.
No, something happened.
It depends on the...
There we go. It was enough for you to come closer, so thanks for that. All right, I said I have a 50-minute presentation, and I was told to give it in 20, or I ended up in 30, and now I've spent half of it already, or something like that. So if I feel I'm rushing something, but that's probably because I am. My name is Janne Sinivirta. I work for Nitor Creations, as I said. This presentation is about lean architecture, which is not the strict definition. This is geared to software architects working in teams. So apparently there's not a lot of you guys here, so hopefully you can still get some ideas out of this. I'll start by explaining what I see a lot in the projects I work in, and how I feel we ended up there, and then listing a bunch of things on a bunch of topics that I think we could be better at. I think pretty much as long as I've worked with software professionally, which is close to 17 years, holy shit, I'm old. I've always wanted to be a software architect. I thought it was the place to be to make the cool stuff in software. I've had that title for close to 10 years now. I don't feel that cool or mighty anymore. And pretty much everything I thought about software architecture has changed since. But I've read a lot. Last time I checked, there's 3,500 books in Amazon.com under tag software architecture. I haven't read them all, but I'm not sure if those are worth throwing away either. You can imagine my frustration when I started to hear in projects that, oh, we are doing agile now, so you as a software architect, kind of obsolete, sorry. But that's not even close to how frustrating it was to realize that this is not a joke. Or that it's a joke in that haha, well, it's funny because it's true kind of way. For all the good things that Agile brings to projects, it also kind of gives a justification to zero to none software architecture. And I kind of feel a bit of a conspiracy there. Well, maybe in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way, but still it kind of allowed for junior developers to get rid of the old bearded guys in their ivory towers and make them stop doing what, or tell them what to do. So why does the traditional architecture have a bad rap? Sorry, Eminem. It used to be very document heavy. Most documentation arriving already obsolete or old or unusable or so on. Those that were useful were usually a great pain to keep up to date. So when you actually need them, like for example, we got a new team member now, so let's give him the documentation. Except remember that that's not there still, and that's changed, and actually we didn't implement that, and well, never mind. Just look at the code. The other thing is that the architects didn't typically work in the team, so it was something that was given to the team outside, and kind of felt that it restricted the innovation or the skills of the team members a lot. So how can we be better? First point is kind of finding the balance. Agile people frown upon big design up front or be duff and offer Yagni or you ain't gonna need it as the correct alternative, meaning that let's just code stuff and when we need something, we create it instead of planning and doing a lot of upfront thinking. Here's a chart that engineers love because it doesn't have, you know, numbers and values there, like, hey, you get 80% thinner hair or stuff like that. What it shows is architectural effort put into the to the project and the whole long-term cost of the project. On the right-hand side, there's the projects that are gone overboard with the agile thinking and ended up paying for it for a lot of rework and refactoring. And on the other side, there's the over-architected projects. This is a simplification of a diagram from Balancing Agility and Discipline, a book by Barry Boehm and Richard Turner. They analyzed a whole bunch of projects done in different methods, and not surprisingly, extremes are not the best way, but still, unfortunately, I've seen a lot of both of these and not a whole lot of the middle ones. Hello. So Agile talks a lot about emergent design, which basically means that writing, especially with things like test-driven development, you create, as you go along, you create your what you need and then implement just that part, and from that it gradually emerges the design of the whole thing. And I agree that there's, although there has been a lot of worrying about this in the Twitter the last few weeks, I won't go into that, but basically, for example, getting your core concepts wrong by not thinking it that well and just starting coding will easily end up with rewrites that are far from what TDD refers as refactoring, which is pretty much always local. And the idea of emergent architecture doesn't work because for the design to emerge freely, it needs a place to grow. So giving the constraints is the job of architecture, or as the God's messenger of TDD, Uncle Bob Martin, says, architecture from tests only is horseshit. There's another concept in Agile which I think is a good one, and I think is misrepresented or abused a lot as an excuse. It's called last responsible moment. The idea is that if we don't have to make a decision now, let's postpone it until we have more information to make it. What this ends up typically being is just postponing things. And when the time arrives for you to make that decision, you don't really have any more information that you started out with, but you are in a more hurry and smaller budget and whatnot. So using it correctly means recognizing hard problems and using that time that you have between now and the last responsible moment to actually do prototyping, to actually do research on the alternatives, so you have real knowledge to make a better decision. later. Alright, so after finding some balance, we need to put all hands on deck. In hurry to wait is a thing I heard a lot in the army. We were always in a hurry wherever we went, and when we arrived there, nothing really happened. I kind of feel that this bad rap the old architecture efforts had is partly because, not because they were a hard project, but the attitude was that, well, I'll write some architecture or write some UML or whatever, and my job is done when I get my email sent to you. And then I'll wait for you to reply when you finally get a chance. And then we'll decide that let's present this on the next board meeting, which is 1 month from here, and you get the picture. Most of the time wasn't spent on actually working on it, but instead waiting. So don't accept the situation where your work is done when you can push it to somebody else's desk. Get the right people available early on to discuss together the important decisions. Be available. I've seen too many projects where a company is willing to shell millions of dollars to a project, but can't invest a single person to be available for discussions. So a lot of ugly surprises arrive later. I think architecture is too important to be left for the architects, meaning you, Jaakko, no. Meaning the combined knowledge of a team is always more than a single architect. This again requires building a certain kind of culture where you appreciate things like pair programming and sharing knowledge and letting the juniors take responsibility and talk freely and question the ideas of the mighty architect of the team. So the basic idea is that architect is not not a role, not a position that you gain, but instead bunch of responsibilities that have to be taken care by the team. It doesn't really matter if it's you or you on the team. Kaizen is a lean term, meaning continuous improvement. In Agile, this is commonly or the most common way is done to retrospectives. So if you're doing Scrum, for example, and you're not doing proper retrospectives, you're doing it wrong. Proper retrospectives also aren't the place to just complain and vent, but have to result in actual action points that lead to change. Same in a broader idea, the mapping of value streams. So basically how, for example, when a boss gets an idea, how long it takes for the boss to get actual feedback from actual users in production. Drawing out this might reveal that actually out of a 2-month cycle, only a few days were spent in development, and the rest were spent on a boss's desk or wherever. And then it would be silly to continue to, try to force more out of the development team instead of focusing on the biggest bottlenecks there. third point, as I said, the continuous improvement and the idea that architecture nowadays is, I think, more and more about soft skills, getting the right people together to talk rather than how strong is your UML kung fu. I want to talk a bit about team versus organization. I've seen a lot of organizations where the enterprise architects make decisions like, well, you're not allowed to use anything else than Subversion here because, well, I want to check out stuff from the Subversion and I don't know how to use Git. It might seem like a harmonizing decision if you look from very high above, but rather they should come and talk with the teams and see how much pain and suffering it is to use Git SVN. Well, the main point is allow teams to make decisions as much as possible, especially things that change frequently. Don't try to harmonize them all. But when you do this, and empowering teams is a great thing, but it has the small hazard of ending up creating silos, because if the teams are fully allowed to make all their decisions by themselves, they don't have any reason to communicate with, for example, between teams. And that's not to say don't let them to decide, rather that make sure there's feedback loops on both ways. Talk to people. Conway's law is summed up here. It's an old one, I think, from 50s, 60s, something like that. That states that your system's architecture will end up looking like the organization it was created in. So taking this the other way around, you can't, or architecture design can't be a technical effort only in a sense that if you are given, for example, two teams, especially if they are not, one is in India and one is in Helsinki, for example, and not taking that into account when you're designing the architecture, it will still gradually change to accommodate the both teams. For example, the overhead of giving them a common code base and then making them, when every time they make a small change, they need to make sure that it's okay with the other team. So rather, take it into account already when you're starting out. Also, this is a way to hack the whole organization's structure. If you want, 5 teams, create a big system with 5 layers. Woohoo! This is what Google suggests when I Google my manager. No wonder that it's easy to blame the organization. All right. There's no organization. There's just other people. Get to know them. Don't say that, well, our team would be great. We would do all these things, but the organization doesn't allow. Bullshit. Find the guy who doesn't allow it, then talk it out with him. Yeah, you get the picture. I was shown the 5 minutes, and I have absolutely no chance of surviving this in next 5 minutes. Domain dictionary, I'll fast forward if I can. Domain dictionary, this is one of the things you have to start out with and put more effort than you're used to. If the idea that I mean with customer, for example, is different than what you mean with customer. I have no chance of creating a system that supports the customers. So reducing misunderstandings and creating a model of things and concepts so that we can speak the same language, the stakeholders, the team, the architects. Don't try to do this like the Sanoma dictionary. The fact is that in a big system, there's, for example, a sales side and a supply side, and their concept of a customer can be totally different. So don't make a schizophrenic class model that represents the both customers in the same class. Find out domains that can be, and this is very helpful in the sense what you talked about, common services, finding these bounded contexts where the concepts are clear. It's very easy to create reusable services through those. I'll skip this. Sorry. When solving problems, prefer languages that already support something over libraries and over design patterns. All architects love design patterns, but basically what design patterns say is that in this language, this problem is hard. That's why we have the design pattern. So it's not a competition of, hey, I can put the most design patterns in this software. Genji Genbutsu, go and see for yourself. If you're an architect working on a system and haven't talked to your end users, you should be ashamed. And typically, especially for our consultants, the customer isn't typically the end user. Don't make that mistake. The customer doesn't typically know what the hell their end users want. Matching user mental model is super important. If you get it right, it feels very intuitive to use the system. If you get it wrong, every time I use the system, I think, well, I want to create this, so that means the software wants me to create that. And that's a tremendous load on your brains doing the translations every time you use it. Also, I've seen horrible examples of creating very nice wizard for a thing that has use once in a year, and then changing a function that used to require just one button press and is done hundreds of times a day to something that requires 2 button presses. I'm sure the end users will love it. Future-proofing architectures works in a way that when you have created what you believe to be a sustainable living area for your code, you go see your boss or the marketing guy or whatever, give him a bunch of booze or cocaine or whatever, and tell him, what do you want in your wildest dreams to see this system doing in like 5 years? And if all those ideas that he comes up with would require big changes to your architecture, you are probably better off rethinking your design now. Documentation. Yay, everybody loves documentation. If there's one thing I want you guys to take out of this, is every time you create a new document, first ask, who's the reader? If there's no reader, don't write the documentation. And if you know who's the reader, write it for him. So don't take a template that, well, the 4th chapter says security, so I'll write something about security. Don't write something about the security if you don't believe that the target audience benefits from that. Code as forward-thinking documentation. Well, yeah, if you can use code instead of creating yet another document, please do that. Document relationships that are not visible from code. Must have documents, so I'll break my rule right away. This is not your must-have documents. This is a bunch of documents that I typically would have loved to see in projects where I arrive in the middle of a project, or I create when I start working on a project. Super simple external integrations diagram, basically your system and what does it talk to. It gives you a sense of bearing in a bigger organization. Breaking that down, here's the same box, your system. These are typically not Java packages, nothing concrete basically, but they can be, well, we have a UI box here and batch runs box here and so on. So it helps to talk about the concepts of your system in relationships. I wrote a small software that you can use for Java. Just give it a jar and a package name like Sanoma, my project, my domain model, and it will go through with reflection the code and create on the fly model that you can use to talk about the code, so you don't have to create more UMLs that will be outdated in 2 days. So, must-have documents, internal component diagram, external domain model as code, domain dictionary, which we already talked about, and decision log, which basically is super simple. Start with the wiki page or whatever, put a line. We decided not to do this, or we decided to use an old version of this library. So next week, when you have forgotten that already and are wondering why the hell we are having an old version of this, and then you'll spend a day because everything just broke. I don't know why, and yeah, that happens in every project, even in a short time, but especially in longer time. Yeah, make a decision log. Don't make people reinvent the wheel again and again. So, as a summary, design enough, early enough. Don't be afraid of agile purists laughing at you. Domain model should predict variance, so if you can find the parts of your model, like the data side, which typically doesn't change a lot, and the algorithm side, which is what the system does. If you can separate these, you're better off creating easily growing systems. See for yourself. Apparently, for example, Toyota production system, or Toyota has a rule that you can't go there to design cars if you haven't driven a supercar 250 kilometers an hour in Deutsche Bahn, because you don't know what you're talking about. So meet the people that you are trying to help with your system. Document things that are not visible from code. Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Questions for Janne? Awesome talk, by the way, so we had to cut it a bit short. In the back.
Can your presentation be available for this crowd?
Sure, you can distribute the slides I sent you. There's a few that I had to drop, and probably a few more that I should have dropped to not like speed talk this through, but hey.
Great story, thank you.
Yes.
Well,
All right. Yep.
About documentation must have. What about the thing when you run it in production, you give it to somebody else to run it? Do you need it for it?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Do they read these technical documents and that's enough?
That's I think depends a lot on the project. So few lines in the wiki can provide enough for some projects, and where possible I would rather see Puppet used or something that is code and reproducible rather than yet another Word document describing deployment environments. Or
what do you think of you build it, you run it against having operations department that runs the stuff? Making the teams responsible for the stuff they produce?
Yeah, I'm all for the DevOps thinking, and I think like the first steps are just getting the guys to actually meet and talk about problems, because like I said, bouncing angry tickets and emails is usually not very efficient, and when you have the time to actually talk with each other, it's usually like 5 minutes and oh, that's why it's difficult for you, or something like that. And from there, of course, having full deployments and upkeeping in one button press and being able to do it several times a day is great, but at least in Finland we still have a lot of customers where they have outsourced the ops side and then use consultants from different companies to do the development, so it doesn't help, getting onwards with the DevOps.
It was fun that you mentioned the subversion versus Git discussion, because initially these sessions started as being the Python evening in the Netherlands, and we kind of organized the first one and invited people from operations because we wanted to get rid of subversion and move to Git, but Git was a step too far. We settled on Mercurial because there was an interface.
That's not bad.
No, so that's how this evening came about. Last question for Janne.
What are your top 3 programming languages?
And your favorite color?
Oh, this is getting really personal. I use Java daily, and I'm actually quite excited about the current state with Java 8 coming. So maybe in like next 5 years when you get to Java 8 in production everywhere, it's fun again. I used to love Scala.
Used to love Scala?
Yeah, I kind of feel that it started like, it's Java with all the ugly parts removed, and now it's like academic wankery with totally overboard generics and whatnot. I have to mention Lua, which is super beautiful, a language which, like, the definition is like 5 pages or something like that compared to 300 pages for the generics of Java alone. So having used that for a gaming project, I realized that many of the languages we've come across have become bloated and backwards compatible pains and whatnot. So unfortunately, you can't use Lua in pretty much anything in work life. But
we used to serve most of the requests per second with a Lua script.
Yeah, it's apparently super efficient.
Not anymore, and I hear the dinner is served.
All right.
So, thanks again.
Thank you.
And we'll be back 10 past 6:40. So that's in half an hour.
Hello. Hi.
Good?
Yeah. No, not good.
Ik moet even zeggen, want kijk, als het geluid is, maar het geluid is niet goed.
Sorry for it.
I get one other André. Hallo dokter.
Yeah, I did think my father's name is André.
Twee wel over straat. De ene wel, de andere mag je eens mislopen.
Everybody thinks I'm Spanish when I see my name.
Yeah, er was een
Mediabedrijf.
Hey, welcome back everyone. Now we do have the slides, but we don't have good audio anymore. So we're working with the mics on the webcams. So sorry about that. We had a lovely pizza. Not as good as the one that Ernst made for us last time in the Netherlands, but always stuff left to improve. New goals. So for our second external speaker of the day, Marco, welcome. You're from Richie.
Yes.
But you can introduce that.
Yeah.
Let's start right away.
Sure.
Okay, good luck.
Great. Thanks. So yeah, I'm going to talk about just some random things about mobile app ads. And I'm Marko Kakkinen, and I'm from a company called Richie. I run it and I own it. And what we do is we have a advertising product called Richie Ads, which is an ad serving technology mostly for native applications. So we're an SDK based solution, and we mostly focus on full page, full screen ad units. We've been at this for about 3.5 years now. And our tech is mostly used by magazine and newspaper apps. So that's the background. And I basically have 6 small things I want to share with you today. And kind of the first thing is that swipe UI or using apps by swiping is the big difference that makes full screen ads work. And this is something that wasn't true on all desktop sites typically. So full screen ads were tried there. They were called interstitial. The problem with them was that navigation on traditional desktop websites is purposeful. It basically means that the reader comes to a website, sees the front page, sees a bunch of interesting stuff on the front page, chooses something to read purposefully, taps on that, expects to get to the thing that they chose, and then they encounter an ad instead. And that's how interstitials used to work. That interrupts the user, and that's horrible. But the great thing about Swipe UI is that the navigation model that users have when they swipe from one page to the next is not as purposeful. They're kind of browsing in the original sense of the word. So when a user is in that mode and encounters an ad, they're not really interrupted, or they don't really feel interrupted. And it's much more like in print newspapers and magazines, where it's natural to encounter full page, full screen advertising in that context. So that's the kind of, I think, big difference that we are encountering now. The other great thing about native applications or ads served in native applications is that we can reliably preload them. So in our platform, for example, ads are just normal or pretty normal HTML5 websites that we just zip up and download to the app in the background. And the key thing is that we do this only once per the campaign duration. So if there's a campaign that's going on for a week, the ad creative will be downloaded a maximum of once per week for a given user. And that's a huge win, because it means that ads can be huge in relation to kind of the traditional way of web display advertising. So whereas kind of a 50 kilobyte banner creative size is on the high end of typical web creative sizes, but it's just not good enough, it's not big enough. Mobile phones these days have full HD screens, and tablets have even bigger resolutions, and you just cannot make a high quality presentation or high quality creative in 50 kilobytes. We need more size, but the ad will need to be downloaded, and the only way to get that big ad to the user is to download it in the background asynchronously. And when we do that, it no longer matters how long the actual download takes, because the users never wait for it. So we can get like this figure is, it's 100 times bigger creative sizes, and that made a huge impact in terms of the effectiveness of the advertising. This has a couple of implications, and the first one is that things like RTB doesn't really work in this context, because the key difference in serving ads this way, the way our platform works, is that each and every ad that we display has been downloaded in advance, typically well in advance. So we might show an ad on Friday that was downloaded on Monday to the user's device. So this is about as far as you get from real-time bidding. So typical real-time bidding implementation has bidders, a typical implementation gives bidders about 120 milliseconds to decide how much they want to bid on an ad impression. And when we're talking about ad creative, that's like 5 megabytes or bigger. It's obvious that you cannot do that download in that time. So you cannot arrange for that bidding to happen in real time unless you want to just in case download all the ads in the world in advance, and that's just the cost doesn't make sense. And kind of in a similar vein, this affects the targeting logic as well. So if we look at online display advertising, the ad technologies used on the desktop, they're typically all about targeting, because that's kind of the only knob that you have to toggle in that business. But that's also because kind of web display advertising doesn't work without targeting. It's notoriously bad in terms of how well a simple web banner ad does in terms of engagement if it's not really accurately targeted. But we found that full screen rich media advertising on mobile works without that hyper accurate targeting, because when the ad's full screen, it doesn't compete with the content at any point for attention. And with the big file sizes, the production value is such that it can be really compelling as content. So so we find that targeting doesn't really improve things to the level that we see on the web, and that's why it's almost not on our radar at all at this point. So in terms of technology, this is actually really simple. It's about actually delivering the ads. So if we're talking about 5 megabyte ad creative for an audience of 10,000 or 100,000 or a million users, kind of the bottleneck is just simply delivering that ad the moment the campaign starts. And the problem is not really the overall traffic volume, it's that the peaks in that volume are much pointier with this approach, because especially if and when we're selling time-based campaigns for a week, for example, a huge portion of the audience will download the ad creative, that 5 megabyte zip package, the moment it actually goes live. And that means that you have 10,000 or 100,000 people hitting those servers at once, trying to get that package. And it might be one of 10 ads that launch at the same time. So you might have 50 megabytes in there. So kind of the technical challenge in serving ads this way is just basically about the kind of mechanical delivery of them. So I have a couple of kind of simple lessons about that. The first thing we noticed is that actually having that native SDK, having our own code running on the client without the limitations of kind of a browser runtimes means that it can be the client itself that kind of orchestrates the whole thing. So the individual units on the server that kind of implement this functionality, they can be really, really independent of each other. And that means that we can kind of use server-side solutions that are a really good match for each individual part of the whole. Because if you look at the different parts of this, which is like analytics gathering, or the actual metadata of which campaigns are live, or the actual download of the ads, those different parts have very little in common. And if you can implement them completely separately from each other, then it gets a lot easier to build an affordable but performant, reliable solution. So in our system, we have, or the SDK talks to these completely different services that have completely different backends. So we have a different endpoint for the metadata of which campaigns are running right now. We have a separate service that does nothing but grants out unique tokens for the clients that we can then later use to track individual users in the analytics. We have a completely separate system for receiving analytics events from the apps, and this is decoupled from the actual viewing of the creative and the actions that the users are taking, so that the analytics part works even offline, because it just stores data locally on the clients. And then we have the downloading of actual ad packages, which is that's the performance critical part, but it's also it's just about downloading files. And so these different parts have very different requirements in terms of how they need to behave. So the analytics gathering, for example, we cannot lose that data. It has to be durable. But we don't have huge uptime requirements or reliability or availability requirements for it, because if it goes down for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, that's essentially harmless, because the clients will just keep retrying to send that data, and it all happens on the background, so it doesn't affect anything. Kind of the only thing that really needs to stay up all the time in this infrastructure is the campaign metadata that tells the clients which campaigns are running. So that needs to stay up, but it's so cheap to do in terms of CPU power required that it's trivial to build a really reliable implementation for it. So we have the metadata endpoints, for example, in Heroku, and a $35 a month Heroku Dyno serves hundreds and hundreds of requests per second with this workload. So it's really, really trivial to scale up. And finally, the ad delivery part is just static file serving. So there's nothing nothing that's difficult to understand about the problem of static file serving. And it's something that you can just, if you want, you can just use a CDN for that stuff. But we found that actually, even with our user base of just tens of thousands of users, it's much better for us to roll our own static file serving infrastructure in terms of the cost. So what we do is we have our own servers on each country, or it depends on the network topology, but close to each target audience, we have our own file serving infrastructure, and then we have a fallback to CDN if we can't keep up with the load of that. So that's the way we ended up building this thing. And I think the key point in terms of how we built this is that it really helps to have a clean slate. We started this 3.5 years ago, and nobody in our team had any experience with serving ads online. So it's everything here was new for us, and that means that, or I think that really helped us to kind of reason from first principles in terms of what we should do, what are the kind of key attributes of this thing, and how this thing should be built. And I think that's really the key thing about all new mobile ad serving technologies, where it's not that the technology is so different that we ended up doing things completely differently, but it's more about it's more about just getting that kind of second chance to think things from the ground up, to rethink stuff and do new implementation without any of the package of the old stuff, and that's basically what we've done. So thank you. Follow me on Twitter. That's the extent of my commercial part of this thing. So, thanks.
Thanks a lot. Any questions?
Yeah.
Okay, so if it's like static file serving,
yeah,
that really makes up that delivery. Can that be also done in mobile clients space with some kind of background agents or scheduled jobs that even remove the past from the equation, so that
yes, absolutely.
At your convenience at night, maybe even context aware that if Wi-Fi is on, you can
Absolutely. So it, of course, we might have time-sensitive campaigns running. So even though it's not about, the user swipe the page, so we better get up and get an ad up really quickly. But if a campaign launches today, it should probably be visible to the users today. So that's kind of the extent of the time pressure there. And so currently, we cope with the peak of our 7 a.m. on Monday traffic, which is what happens here with Helsinki and Sanoma, where they sell 10 weekly campaign slots. And so the typical user starts to download the ads when they first launch the app on Monday morning. And that's like a really, really narrow peak, 7 a.m. each Monday. But if that turns out to be a problem in the future in terms of just bandwidth issues, we have like 10 gigabits of bandwidth there, and if that turns out not to be enough, then I think what we can do is spread that load throughout the night with push notifications or background downloads and stuff like that.
The background agents typically run like every 20 minutes or 30 minutes depending on the platform, and or with Android it's a bit different even. And point being that if that's not time critical, then it could be done this way. But then again, another cost for either that way or then CDN. Whichever is cheaper.
CDNs are, I don't know what your total volume is, but for us, we're kind of in the bracket where CDNs are really expensive for us, where we have significant volume, but not enough to get huge discounts from the CDN vendors. So we're kind of there in the middle where it really pays off for us to build our own infrastructure. But I'm not sure whether that will be true in the future as we grow, but that's the current situation.
You said that full page ads work really well for sort of browsing experience. How do you see that transforming or transporting into the task-oriented apps or games or things like that?
I haven't seen very good solutions on that front. And it might be that we're a bit myopic because we're really focused on this kind of magazine, newspaper centric use case. But it kind of, to me, the key aspect of our results has been that the users don't find that these ads interrupt them. And I can't see how that would be true in a gaming scenario, for example. So it kind of, I think it changes the advertisers. You cannot sell advertising like that to brand advertisers, for example, because it's so critical to them that they're not annoying users. And it probably sells the sort of creative that gets used as well. But I think from a kind of perspective of a newspaper or magazine publisher, the key advantage of this is that the natural strengths of the print advertising side are there. So this is something that's really easy to leverage when selling digital advertising to existing print customers. But yeah, it's going to be problematic with games and task-oriented apps for sure.
Okay, final question for Marco?
No.
Okay, thanks guys. Was Lasse, because we had a change in the, were there? Yeah.
Is the third or fourth different type of device we're plugging in?
Yeah. Oh, you're dirty. So thanks for dropping in at the last moment, because I think maybe over the weekend you heard that we were looking for an additional speaker because the additional speaker got sick.
Yes, pretty much on Sunday morning around sometime after 8 a.m. So,
okay. Yeah. But this was something you already had laying around delivered before.
Kind of, yeah. I've been talking about this in different kinds of contexts, but never with this 20-minute limit. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge. I have an additional challenge. It's purely like self created. I like my voice really, I do. So you're going to have to drag me out of here. But
okay.
Other than that, yeah.
Well, probably Jelmer starts waving his hands and show you the number of minutes you have left.
Right.
Thanks for coming in such a short notice and take the time you need.
Sure. The microphone. Do I need the microphone?
It's not working.
It's not working. Can you pick up the volume? Yeah. So, first of all, thanks for the invite, even though I'm kind of your second choice, I guess. I work for a company called Reactor. You have my name and email there. My colleague was supposed to talk about growth hacking here. Instead, I'm going to talk about babies, objects, and teamwork. I'm going to start with the babies. So that's my son. He's most of the time adorable, but he creates complications at our home. Some of the complications you might be well aware of if you're parents. If you're not parents, I can assume that your imagination is good enough to imagine what happens when nature calls. He's wearing diapers. He certainly doesn't know to do or go to the right place at the right time. So what happens is this: somebody picks up a smell. It's often I have something chronic with my nose. I just can't smell all the things as well as my wife. So most of the time it's my wife who picks up the smell. And then she asks, did Luca make a poo? And she's directing the question at the boy. And the boy always says no. Well, that's also one of the few words that he can say, but the answer is always no. No poo here. And that's fine, because the question is actually directed at me. So she's saying to the baby a message that is intended for myself. And there's the complication is that, of course, I'm just one of two parents, right? And we're both very well capable of changing diapers. So why is it always me who gets to change the diaper? I promise this hassle into teamwork. So the fundamental complication in our, let's say, this domestic situation is that I have two options. I can either decide to step into a box, or I can decide to stay out of the box. Now let's walk through this diaper situation in both ways. First of all, perhaps the better way out would be to stay out of the box with total clarity of the situation, no bias in any direction whatsoever, and simply say, Luca, let's go change the diaper. You'd be done, right? But then there's the other option, which I not very often, but I admit sometimes take, which is to realize that I just heard that phrase again, and decide to ignore it. Let's say pretend that I can't hear because I'm in this different room, or pretend to not hear it because I'm just putting dishes to the machine. I can also decide to say something like, honey, could you change the diaper? But for some reason, it's most often my response is to step into this box and distort my reality while changing the diaper. This is what happens. I say something along the lines of, yes dear, I'll change the diaper. I might say to the baby, but the message is intended for my wife. Now, while I'm saying this, what goes in my mind is something like, here we go again. It's me changing the diaper. while the lazy woman is, I don't know, doing her hair or whatever. And it might be okay every now and then, but if this happens all the time, you can imagine how well the relationship develops. So we have these two ways. The behavior might be identical. The behavior was, I'm going to change the diaper, right? It's just that my frame of mind is completely different, and this has a lot to do with what happens at the workplace. So some wise people have called this self-betrayal, referring to the fact that it's our decision to either follow what we think is the right thing to do. The baby needs a diaper changed. My wife clearly expressed a request. She needs me to change the diaper. Now, I need her to change the diaper as well. I have other ways of using my time, surely. But by default, these two needs should be equal. We're all created equal, right? So if I obey the feeling of what I think is the right thing to do, there's really like nothing changes. The situation doesn't become any more luxurious or glamorous than it is changing diapers, but it also doesn't get any worse. If I betray my sense of what's right in this situation, I create something called cognitive dissonance. So what happens is I behave in a way that's different from what I would see a good person doing. And the human brain, unless you have some kind of a permanent damage, you cannot sustain cognitive dissonance. The only way out without losing your mind is to resolve the dissonance. Basically, bringing your idea of what should be and what is closer and closer together until you don't realize that there's a gap between your self-image and the mirror image. So the only option is to justify my behavior. For example, I decide to change the diaper, but in this inside the box, I'm shutting myself into a box, separating myself or distancing myself from my wife. And basically, inside my head, I'm justifying why I'm doing this. And I'm at the same time, I'm inflating the flaws in my wife. Now, some of them might be real, but that's not the point. The point is I'm distorting the reality. I'm making her flaws much worse than they are, or much bigger. At the same time, I'm inflating my own greatness as a great father and good husband and so forth. Because I do these things for her, even though she always makes me change the diaper. So this leads to, or can lead to a somewhat alarming trend. Now imagine what the long-term effect is. I call this the collusion. So on the top left corner on the graphic there's the action I take. Now there's two ways of being in a situation, or exercising the same behavior, like agreeing to change the diaper. I can be outside the box or inside the box. If I'm inside the box and shut my wife out, what I do is still agree to change the diaper. But the thing is, other people are very, very good at picking up what goes on in my mind. So they sense my sort of inner behavior. It might come off as like tone of voice or body gestures or things like that. But generally, you pick up the real mood you're in. So what my wife sees is the lazy bastard changing diapers only after she asks me. And that, of course, influences how she responds. For example, she might not say thanks or whatever you're supposed to say, whatever she feels is the right thing to do in this situation. Instead, she might add, you know, I really shouldn't have to ask, or he's your son as well. But she chooses to, she chooses between these two modes. Either she stays out of the box or jumps into the box. And again, what she decides to do, I pick up. Now, if we both make this decision to see the other as more of an object rather than a person with actual needs, more as a lowly biological thing rather than an equal person with a soul, it turns into a vicious cycle. It just gets worse and worse. So this might be happening at the workplace as well. If you think about these two modes, you're in the box or outside the box. When you're in the box, all you can think is essentially what the other person does wrong and what I have done right. You might have to dig deep to find things that you actually did right, and then start inflating those flaws and goodnesses appropriately to justify or create a sense of feeling good about yourself and how you're behaving in this situation. Now, focusing on our good deeds or the flaws of others isn't very productive work. Most of the results an organization creates is not due to the people thinking about themselves or others. The results come from the behavior that we jointly engage in, and the behaviors we pretty much choose based on what goes on in our minds, what our attention is given to. And I postulate that whatever we're trying to achieve probably needs our attention more than justifying how many times this week I've changed the diapers, or how many times I've fixed the problem that somebody else created, or how many times they've made a mistake in general. So it's really very basic. It's like no blaming. If we can get out of blaming others or blaming ourselves, and therefore get away from justifying our behaviors and staying sort of clear on what's actually happening, what's the right thing to do, regardless of who's going to do it. That should give us a better sort of overall performance. But there's another sort of problem here. If we're already in the vicious cycle, we're already blaming each other's and seeing each other as, let's say, lazy, stupid, inconsiderate people, something needs to break that cycle. And one of the challenges is that while we're in the box towards the other person, we can't get out of the box. There's no way that we can magically stop seeing them as objects and start seeing them as people. Something else needs to sort of invoke that memory that, you know, that's a real person with real needs and so forth. If the other person is in or out of the box, doesn't really matter. What's worse is that even if they're out of the box, they can merely sustain the status quo by managing to stay out of the box. So the best case is nothing, it doesn't get any worse, but it doesn't get any better either. And the worst case is, of course, that they're also in the box and it just gets worse all the time. So our best hope is for somebody else, a third person in this sort of equation to engage in the sort of in this threesome, so that while two people are having a conflict or in this vicious circle, the third person has a good relationship with hopefully both of them. And if you're outside of the box towards that third person, at least momentarily you have a clear position, a moment of clarity in the midst of this, let's say, frustration or venting, self-justification. So in that moment we might remember that, yes, that other person, maybe they're not so lazy or stupid or incompetent as I thought. Maybe there is a good reason for them behaving that way. Maybe I didn't make it any easier for them. And that at that point, when you ask that question, maybe, then you're already out of the box. So what I take out of this is that teams can actually help each other stay on the path, as long as you have interactions, that is. Now, the modern workplace is in many ways a bit more challenging than what we had like 10 years ago. I remember the time before Skype, for example, where the best we could do is schedule a phone call. Now we have this remote work that seems viable. We have Skypes and we have FaceTimes. We have the mobile networks that actually don't even tie us into a workplace. We can engage in video conversations on the move and so forth. So it might seem like it's easier to do. This is the Allen curve, and I forgot when the first version of the Allen curve was published, but this guy called Allen studied the effect of physical distance between people to the number of interactions they had. And it looked like there's a clear correlation. There's I think it was a power law, I think, that the further you were physically from another person, the fewer interactions you would have, statistically speaking. And the fewer interactions you have, the fewer chances to remember that, yes, I might have, let's say, misperceived the situation. I might have been in the box during that conversation with Jack or Jill or whoever. Now, what about Skype? And these live conversations over technology, they're supposed to help, right? Well, it turns out that in 2006, when we already had the sort of first versions of these, maybe not the quality of Skype, but still, we had the technology, but the situation with these interactions actually got worse. So the ability to have these conversations over technology, it actually lowered our face-to-face interactions over the board. So it wasn't that we're going to have conversations that weren't possible before. It was more like the conversations we had before. Now we just have more of them with a less high-quality bandwidth. There's also another factor, which is that it's not just physical distance. This is like a Microsoft-funded research from a few years back. They studied and they sort of coined this term affinity distance. It's like an index that combines a bunch of different types of distance. Physical distance is one, but there's also distance related to the kind of work you do. So if you imagine a a fairly specialized team where everybody has their own little sandbox. That's effectively the same thing as moving people 10 meters apart. The natural need and frequency of communication drops. There's no point in talking because we're not working on the same thing. So we need to figure this out as well. Distance isn't all bad though, because the more distance we get, the more likely it is that we have diversity. If you spend 10 years in the same room with two people, at the end of the 10 years, you think the same. You absorb each other's mental models and thinking. That's not necessarily a good thing. But it's a balancing act. We need a bit of both. So what I suggest that this all boils down to is that this lever. There's distance between individuals, and then there's the frequency of our communications. And we'd like to find a good balance for both, so that the amount of innovation happening is increasing very quickly. And on one hand, the quality of conversations is even more important than the frequency of those communications or the media we use to have them. Because in the end, what we can do with ourselves being in the box or outside the box completely changes the equation. If we're having conversations all the time, but we're in the box and all the time we're thinking, you know, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about, they're incompetent, why did they hire that person in the first place? And you know, if I would have done that project, I would have done so much better job. It doesn't actually help. You need all three. You need frequent communications. It might be helped with this short distances, but on the other hand, we need the talent that might not be local. We need the diversity that might not be local. So we need to balance these two and have these conversations that end up nicely in, let's say, fruitful or uneventful outcomes rather than this vicious cycle of blaming and self-justification. Thank you. That was my pitch for a more humane style of interaction. I'm curious what kind of questions that raised in your minds.
We need to be out of the box with regards to the line.
Yes. There is definitely much more online communications now than compared to 20 years ago, that's for obvious reasons. Do you think it will continue that way? Like in 20 years from now, will there be some kind of everything will be only online, or there will be stay some small distance communication?
Well, I'm not an expert in the future. There are some people that imagine being like that. I dare not even pretend to be a psyche. But looking at the past, we could say that yes, it's going to continue. The trend seems to be that we're having rich conversations with a continuously shrinking community of people. So maybe 20 years ago we had frequent conversations with 20 or 30 people. Now it's more like 10 people. Your team at work, your family, and maybe your next door neighbor if you don't live in the city. And that's about it. So I don't see that trend turning. I don't see a reason why it would change. But then again, I don't have a crystal ball. What I do think is that we need to acknowledge the trend, and it's even more difficult to avoid inefficiency in our relationships and in our organizations if we don't figure out a way to get around the limitation. video is better than just audio, for example, but it's not quite enough.
No one dares to ask another question?
Yeah, if you were all Finns, I wouldn't say anything, but since not all of you are Finns, I'm proud of silencing a room. Right. Thank you, everybody.
So, for our last speaker of the day, it's the second Sami.
Give me a second to
do this there, because otherwise you're in the shot. No, it's no problem. You should be aware that you're not picking your nose or... Sponsor. Thanks, Anders from the Innovation Lab to provide the food and drinks. Do you want the floor?
Do I want the floor? Sure, I can take the floor. Hello everybody, good to see you all. My name is Anders van Vught, I'm from the Innovation Lab. The Innovation Lab is also present here in Finland and it's led by Antti Okkonen. Hi, I'm Antti Okkonen, actually. It's a great opportunity to be here. I asked Sander to be part of this because I have been in IT for the last 6 years. Beginning of this year I started on my endeavor at the Innovation Lab because I wanted to do something else. I came from the startup scene before I joined Sanoma. The reason why I am here is basically because the Innovation Lab needs you. And I also think that the Innovation Lab can offer you something. So IT needs the Innovation Lab. That's it for now, because I want to leave you curious on why we need each other. So feel free to ask questions later on. Feel free to have a conversation with me. And I'm sure we meet each other all again soon in the near future. Thank you very much.
So, that's to you.
Yeah.
Good.
I'll be quick because I want to go home.
Yeah, I think the rest of us too. So,
Okay.
make it short and interesting.
I will.
Thanks.
Thanks. So my name is Sami and nice to see you here. And this is not Sanoma related at all. And I have called so I can hear shit. So if you have any questions rather than going home, please send me emails or something like that. But anyway, I'll talk about things that I've done like within the last 7 or 6 years. I used to work for Nokia for 7 years before Sanoma. I came here last August. And I'll talk about 2 location web apps that I've done. Another one is Postgres. I'll be talking about more about that. Then Wapeba. And it makes a little more sense after this stack. But anyway, the name. What the hell is Puska? Well, back in the days, I was trying to figure out what could be the name for this app that I just created. I realized that, damn, the bush, Puska means bush. So bush race was actually the domain was taken. I was like, wow, let it be Puskares then. So it's been like 7 years old, and it's still Puskares. And people around the world, they know that it's Puskares. So, but what it does actually? It's another kind of thing I show you. Oh. What? Wrong screen, sorry. Un momento, por favor. Technical difficulties. Damn Max. Shouldn't that be Dutch beer?
That's actually from last SaKE that was held in Hotdog.
Oh yeah.
I like to work with.
Let's try again.
Alright. This is micro.
So let's put it full screen. And this is the context where it is used. Run! No, it's just a normal list. Okay, but you get the picture. What's happening there? Yeah. So the thing is that this application, all those players, they have their phones that our country don't have in their pockets, and it's sending location to the server where the commander can see where they are, and they can then command that you now need to go there, you have to go there, and that kind of stuff. So it's a kind of solution to track paintball players on a real-time map, and consists of a dashboard that is a HTML file and the mobile native application that is written on top of iOS, Windows Phone 8, and Android. To put it really simply, what it is first there needs to be a capture of the location, then there's a layer of the data, and then some way to send comments back to the player. So it tracks the GPS all the time and delivers that as a form of JSON object to the backend. And yes, it runs on LAMP. It still works. It does the trick. It's plain simple. And then the front is on top of it's a file with PHP and all that. And this is a example of a JSON object that is sent to the backend like every 5 seconds. And just the user ID, operation ID. Operation refers to the game, and the player name and object client class. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then the array of position. That might be that the player has actually moved 3 points, and they all need to be pushed at once. And then the header of the client. And that is the point is that it's not that the player is staring at the phone. The point is that actually, at least those paintball players, they are using PMR phones to communicate. So it's not, they are not actually relying totally on the screen what's happening there. And this the dashboard what they can have. They have the real-time weather, which actually matters, but they have some metadata of the operation, and then they have a list of all those players in current game session. And then you can start following and sending drag and drop that player to this different position, then he or she will receive that order. And I rewrote the whole thing like a couple of weeks ago, and I cleared the database. And this is users within the last 2 weeks. So it's this used to be totally full of green dots, but currently people are adapting the new version and trying to get familiar with it. And it's quite simple if I just like go here, if anything happens. Yeah. This is the commander side. Start, I can sign it with my Facebook credentials or just like Puskare specific credentials. And here I have all my operations where I get involved too. And if I open this up here, I can see the current status of all the place. So, well, apparently I'm the only one here. Then I can have details of the operation, like this is coming. This weather data is coming from Norwegian Meteorological Center for free, and then you can have all those troops here, like me, here, and then objects. I can tell you about those later on. But then you can have a comms, and I'm not talking about trail now. But then I can also switch on 3D form, so I can actually open the same game session. Oh, wrong screen again. Where's my mouse? Hello. So it's here now. So I can start browsing the. So I can have this in real time, so you can actually see if troops are moving in some certain direction. You can see what's going on here. So, well, apparently we are here. But anyway, then. Let's go back to the presentation. But that was like I set up that like 2008 or 7, and then last year I was starting to think about it. What's the purpose of the whole thing? It's not making any money. What if I could try to use it in somewhere where it really matters? And really nice story I was seeing on a letter of our Sanomatalo, and saw a military chopper flying, hovering on top of a forest, and they were actually looking for some lost person. And then I realized that, hey, maybe those guys, volunteers in the forest, they could use this kind of capability to track those people. So that night, I wrote a letter to Finnish Red Cross that is organizing all those rescue operations in Finland. And then after that, there was like 1 month silence. But then they reached me and said, yes, hell yes, that's what we need. So from that point forward, I took the base code of the booster race and put it in the form of application that could be used in voluntary search and rescue missions in Finland. And the name is not mine. They already got this kind of acronym VAPEPA that stands for Vapaaehtoinen Pelastuspalvelu. That is a voluntary search and rescue service, and it's coordinated in Finland by Finnish Red Cross. And the purpose of the application is not playing paintball, but it's looking for example, those old people from forest that they really bad memory, they don't know why they are there, and infants they are missing from daycare or whatnot, and then of course those typical people who just like get lost, and then those volunteer people, they go to that site and they start looking for those people, and the leader of that campaign must track where are those volunteers currently. And until now they've been drawing on a paper that I was there, and then they hand over those documents to authorities like police, and they are like, we can't make out of anything from these papers. So they cops and Red Cross, they were really enlightened that from now they can have actually all that data in KML files and have that after operation. So VAPEPA Radar is a solution to track volunteers in real time on map, and again the same dashboard and mobile application. But this time I didn't have time to transfer it to iOS, so currently it's for Windows Phone 8 and Android only. And the backend is almost the same, but it's more from client to the backend side thing that you can track the location, but you can also mark places that if you find some hat or glove from the forest, you can tag the place and send the photo to the backend. So then from the KML file, you can see, okay, that was found at that time from that part of forest. And again, the JSON file is similar kind of thing, but there is this update client class here, and it refers to whether it's a human, a dog, or a car, because they're using those three. And actually, got a new requirement this morning that they need fourth class, and that is airplane. So that's totally okay. And it tracks like it captures all those. Was it like 5 meters across squares that where have you been, and then we can see that okay, that spot is still missing. We need someone going there, and in that context, it's more important to know about what's the current weather, and is it getting cold or something. And and fortunately, I have a mask here. I have a volunteer called as Hugo Jevet, currently in live here. So I have Hugo. Let's see if he's already. Yes, he's already in Hartwall. Listening to Robbie Williams, and he found someone. I don't know who.
Aha, okay.
So he knocked that.
Now her clock, she's in the background.
Yes, yeah. And I can see what was the road. Okay, train doesn't work because of GPS, but anyway. So the same thing here, you can start off take a look at the password and username. It's really awesome. Finnish Red Cross is currently practicing with this. They are not using this yet for the production use, but they are getting there. So again, I can see that Hugo first went to Burger King, and there's a picture of the hamburger, and then he took a train. For some reason, in a train, it doesn't actually have that good.
It's the mobile data, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Train. Now he got off on the train to Pasila, and then he went to the Hartwall. He's there carefully, having fun. So, if you have more questions, please contact me, and that's all. Let's go home.
From where do you get the 3D map of Helsinki?
How did I get that?
Yeah, from where?
Google.
Okay.
Yeah, currently I'm using just Google Maps. I used to use Ovi maps because I was working in Nokia, but now it doesn't matter. I use iOS and all that stuff. Thank you.
Thank all of you for coming. Special thanks for Jelmer for arranging most of the stuff, doing the video streaming. Yeah, you didn't benefit from that, but for all people at home, and bringing the broken mic. And Andres and I think Ansi also helped out with organizing the rooms and all the stuff here. Jarkov providing some of the speakers. And a special thanks for all the speakers for making this possible. If you feel you want to share something for the next SaKE, please contact any of us and scream out what you want to talk about. It can be from your day job, but it can also be like Sami from his personal life, which as long as you think it's interesting for this crowd, and we kind of agree, then you're more than welcome to join. Next one will be in the Netherlands. We'll then stream it this way, and then probably after summer we'll try to organize the next one, if you think it was valuable. So, do you think it was valuable?
Yes, sure.
Yes? Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, and see you around.